how the black community is policed is important. Meaning that the tactics, or actually more importantly, the strategy that's utilized for the community is important because it's the strategy that's going to drive the tactics that are going to be utilized in and on the community. And I want to use a specific incident in order to illustrate this point, if you allow me at this point, because the incident that I'm thinking of is one that I was contemplating. Do I want to talk about? Did I not want to talk about? I shared it with a small circle of friends, and we talked about it quite a bit. And I'll be honest with you, the replies or responses were all over the place. Some were extremely critical, others were extremely insightful in the fact that when listening to them, they weren't as critical of the police in this situation. And I guess I'm kind of giving it away a little bit, but they weren't as critical of the police, but they were extremely complimentary of the police in this particular situation. And the incident that I'm talking about is one that was actually posted by the LAPD on the LAPD YouTube page. And not only was it complimentary from a lot of people, and I disagree with the complimentary aspect of it on certain parts, but it was shocking. And I guess this is where I'm going to be complimentary of them, because the primary reason why I would say it's shocking was the level of transparency that we have in this incident, this officer involved shooting, or OIS they're talking about, being placed on their website. And yes, I know that when I watched it and I'm listening to it, that they put their own spin on it, that they've carefully crafted their narrative, and that they missed out, or neglected to include, I should say, a very key camera angle and audio from this incident. However, the fact that they even put it out there on a YouTube page, a place for the citizenry rather, I should say, to go in there and look at, to be able to critique it the way that they have, it's shocking. There's a level of transparency that it's refreshing to see, right? It's a step in the right direction. And granted, there's a lot more steps that we can take and a lot more steps that are necessary. But looking at it, it still is a step in the right direction. And so when I look at it and I'm seeing this video here that's listed on their site, it's I have to go back to that primary point all over again, that when you're considering the fact that they have a video of an officer involved shooting, and to be honest, it's not one that to me puts them in a very favorable light. To some of the people in my circle of friends and family, they looked at it and it did put them in a favorable light, and we discussed it quite a bit. And the fact that we're able to discuss it, to have this Monday morning armchair quarterback as the citizens looking at this, at what the police are doing, is remarkable, right? And I can't stress enough how remarkable that is, because normally the police consider themselves above the law, right? They're supposed to be there to protect and serve, but they view themselves above the law. And this is in no large part because of things like qualified immunity that help to keep them considered, that there's the normal citizenry and then there's them as the police, that they are way ahead of the law or the citizenry. And this type of footage is normally not accessible to us as citizens. We're treated as if the law doesn't apply to them, but to us it does, and that they're not held accountable. And that there's an issue there, because from my vantage point, if the police are there to protect and serve, if the police are there and given the authority they have by the citizens, then the police should be scrutinized and held to a higher set of laws than the normal citizenry is held to. And that's normally not the case, right? They're not held to a higher set of laws, but they should be. right? Similar to how the armed forces, if you are in the military in any facet, if you are a part of the military, then you are held to the normal federal, state, and municipal laws that the normal citizenry. But in addition, you're held to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, or the UCMJ, right? So, and I can't stress that enough, because I need to come back. I don't want to belabor the point, but I don't want to just gloss over it, because the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, it is a set of laws. It's not a policy or a set of judicial rules or something along those lines. It is actual law that the military members are held to. And that's important also, because if you are in charge of the citizenry's life, liberty, that is something that you should be held to a higher standard. Those laws should be higher. So if you're a policeman, if you are a politician, if you're a judge, if you are an attorney, the rules, or more specifically the laws, so not just a rule set that applies to you, but a law set that applies to you, should be higher if you're in those occupations than those that apply to the normal citizenry. Because you can put somebody behind bars, you can take someone's life. You are in charge of making the rules by which we are all governed. So if you are in those positions of power and authority, you should be held to a higher set of laws than what the rest of us are actually held to. And I think that when looking at this video, or the fact that LAPD has their own YouTube page, and they will put a video like this of an incident that happened in the community that has an officer involved shooting, and they would include the body cam footage in this video that they put up, and again, it's remarkable in the time frame in which it was put up. So the incident happened in July. 45 days later, after the incident took place, I believe it was July 18th. So July 18th, this incident happened. 45 days later, September 1st, it's when it was time stamped on YouTube. They posted this incident. So even while this incident is ongoing as far as the investigative stage, they did their initial investigation, and then they released this officer involved shooting video onto their YouTube page. So again, this is amazing. It is something that they should be commended for. And now I want to get into some of the things that are problematic when looking at it, that are teachable moments for the police, specifically as not just there, but for police in general when looking at it. And it's something that if you're going to be policing the community, if you are there to police the community, these are things that should be observed, and they should be graded on for how well that they did or did not do in policing the community. And again, I think that all of the footage should be released. And the footage I'm specifically talking about, and I'll talk about it a little more in depth as we get on into this, is the footage from the cruiser. So there was there were two cruisers that we see that are there. They included the body cam footage of two officers on foot, and they include the body cam footage of the police supervisor from the cruiser. They did not include the cruiser footage that should have been included, along with the cruiser's audio that should have also been included in this officer involved shooting scenario that they have here. So that's one of the issues that we're going to talk about. But when you first get into it and you're seeing some of the videos, and again, I'm not going to post the entire video here. The video, again, is on their website, and I would encourage you, I'm going to put a link down in the description box below, so please go over there, take a look at it there on their site. But here I want to talk about some of the issues that are problematic in this, that are teachable moments that they should be looking into. And I think that in reality, there's some training issues that are there with the police officers, and I want to talk about those. If you're going to be policing the community, those things that need to be tightened up in dealing with the community, so that we don't have loss of life or minimize the number of officer involved shootings. So to start off with, the CEO or the commanding officer for Media Relations Division at LAPD, she's the one who's giving this critical incident community briefing, as she's calling it. And she defines what an officer involved shooting is. They go through this when you're really getting into it. They talk about the fact that, or she talks about the fact that we're in the early stages of the investigation. It can take up to a year based off of previous history of how these things have gone. So that up to a year is not something that's a line in the sand, so to speak. This is something that is up to a year based off of previous history. So as a how things go, it could actually take longer than that. And she begins to prime you, right? She's crafting a narrative. She's very, very good at what she's doing. Crafting this narrative, priming you by telling you this is what you're going to see, this is what you should expect to see, and this is what it's going to show you. Neglecting to tell you that there's some things that weren't there, and painting a picture for you so that you're getting ready for what it is you're getting ready to see, and you're primed like a pump, right? Yeah, you're getting ready to see some things, and this is what you're going to see, and she's going to narrate it for you, right? She's going to take you by the hand and walk you through exactly what it is that she wants you to get out of this. And I'm going to suggest that there's a lot that's here as you're unpacking it. And one of the other things I didn't cover initially that I want to cover once you start getting into this, because they're going to go in order. You're going to get the 911 call, the officer's chatter that they're talking about on the radio. Then you're going to get the actual incident from one of the body cams. Then they're going to slow it down. Then you're going to get the incident again. And then you're going to get it again from the supervisor's body cam. And then as she's going through it, she's going to give you some expository information to tell you about it as she's going through it. So I'm going to try and minimize giving you the expository. I know I'm giving you some of the context as we're getting started right now, and unfortunately, just to offset what it was that was stated by her, yes, I'm going to give you some context here. We're going to make some assumptions, or I'm going to make some assumptions. It's going to be on things like, I don't know, the timbre of the voice of some of the callers is going to I'm going to make some assumptions on what the sex and race of these individuals are based off the timbre of the voice as you're listening to it. So let's get into it. So here, as we're looking at this, what you're seeing over here is the event that actually occurred, right? So they she's gonna give you the expository on what happened, but jumping into it, they start off with the 911 calls. And there's going to be two 911 calls, and this is where I get into eyewitness testimony not always being the most reliable. So the eyewitness testimony tells you several things, right? So the first caller comes in, the first caller tells you it's a black male he sounds like a black male himself, but it tells you that there's a transient black male there with dreadlocks and a flannel shirt, gives you the color of the shirt, and to give a description to the officers, and tells them that the individual has a gun, tells them about the entire encounter that he had with the individual, and that person had a gun, and which we'll learn later on that's not accurate. The individual didn't have a gun. However, the individual has an item that's intended to look like a gun, which I'd say, so if you were saying that this individual definitively had a gun, the eyewitness testimony is going to be slightly off, but it was intended to deceive by the suspect. So the suspect has a gun, has a gun according to the eyewitness. The second call comes in from a female, which reinforces that this individual has a gun and a new direction on where it is that the officers can find it, because it looks like the officers have driven past the individual, the suspect, with the gun. Then it picks up with the chatter from the dispatcher to the officers. So this is important because this gives us a mindset at the time that they were doing it, what the officers were dealing with, right? What it is that the officer believed was going on, because they give the physical description of the individual that came in from the callers that we just covered, plus says with the caller stated that the individual has a black semi-automatic handgun and threatened somebody with it. And again, the impression that the caller got was that they were threatened with a black semi-automatic handgun, although what we learned later on is that that's not the case. They were threatened, however, it wasn't a black semi-automatic handgun. So then, when we're looking at this, the video, this is where the spin really comes in, and you're gonna see
he turned toward them multiple times while pointing a black metallic
really
object believed to be a firearm in their direction. Shortly thereafter, a
pretending
patrol
to be
sergeant,
scared
also
after.
believing Petit was armed with a
Initially,
handgun,
they were scared.
arrived at scene.
The adrenaline
He
was pumping. They believe that they have an individual with a weapon, and they get in there. So let's just start off here, and this is like about 5 minutes into the video, right? So if you're watching this and you go to their website, about 5 minutes in, 5 minutes and 14 seconds in, it is they give you a body. Actually, 5 minutes 55 seconds is when the video actually starts. So 5:55 video actually starts, and you're gonna see what actually starts happening. And so you're gonna get the first officer, and this is the body cam footage from the first officer they're gonna give. I'm just gonna call him first officer, second officer, and then supervisor. First officer gets out the vehicle and begins to pursue on foot, and you can see he's really into this. And his partner, around 6 minute mark, 6:08, somewhere around there, races ahead. You can see them on the video racing ahead. And the officer who got out and who's on foot, you can tell he is hyped up. His adrenaline is dumped. He's ready to go, right? And he instructs the suspect, get your hands out of your pockets, even though one of the hands is already, you can see it clearly from his body cam, one of the hands is already out of the pocket. He can't see the other hand, which is the right hand of the suspect. He can't see from his vantage point. And he is screaming and yelling for him to not move, which is what he should have told him, just not move, but he's adrenaline pumping. You know, that's where he's at right now. This is something where to me, they should be doing a lot more training. At this point, the second officer, if you're watching, after he races the cruiser ahead, hops out, and around 6 minutes and 20 seconds into it, he hops out as well. And now he's in a better position to see what's in the suspect's hand, because when he pulls up ahead, he hops out the vehicle and he's in front of the suspect, and he can see both hands, right? And the suspect flags him with this supposed gun, which, when he looks at it, both officers now are drawn down with their weapons on the suspect, and they can both see one of them, the second officer in front, can see that it's not a gun. Not only can he see that it's not a gun, he calls it out to the second officer once he's flagged him, and he's also now lowers his weapon. Both officers once he states to him, it's not a gun, right? And to me, this is the training moment. You see that it's not a gun, you recognize it's not a gun, you call it away that it's not a gun to the other officer, you have your radio in your hand, and you can see this in the video, specifically from the second officer's video. Once you see his body cam, radio's in his hand, he should have called it away, it's not a gun. This way, not only do they, does where you're at, the escalation, you can see that it drops. He even stops chasing after him. Like initially it was full on, all out sprint. Now all of a sudden they're just like, oh, it's not a gun, and didn't call it away, so that everybody's there and they know that they can go from a lethal response or a possible lethal response to a less than lethal response. In other words, you can go from having your gun drawn and ready to sit there and put rounds on target, to now you can use things like your taser or batons or other items to subdue the suspect and get the suspect off. And I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit as to why it is I'm stating it this way. So when you look at from the second officer, you'll see his viewpoint or his vantage point when he gets out, and looking at it from his vantage point, you can see that once he gets out and he can see it, he goes, oh, it's not a gun. Because he gets out, he's more forceful in his commands with or more assertive, I should say, with his commands to the suspect to stop, get up against the wall, which is what the other officer should have also been stating but the suspect is not stopping. And once they recognized that it was not, that a lethal response wasn't required, they had around 10 to 13 seconds between that time, but between that time that they recognized it and the suspect being shot. So looking at it from that perspective, they could have avoided it if they would have A, called it away, and B, they should have went to a less than lethal response. Why should they have gone to a less than lethal response? One of the things that they highlight as well after you see the second officer's footage and the supervisor's footage, who I believe is who actually shot the suspect, but it's not confirmed because we only get to see the supervisor's body cam footage because he's driving when the shots actually ring out, which if he did fire, means that he fired from a moving vehicle on the suspect as he was driving in an area where they also show you, or what LAPD shares with you, is surveillance footage from somebody's surveillance that was there in the area, right? So whether it's a Ring doorbell or whatever, they had surveillance footage from one of the citizens there to be able to show you the incident as they seen it happen when the suspect was shot in this officer-involved shooting. So so he's driving down, and you can see two little kids, two young black girls in the area playing, chasing after looking and seeing when the shots ring out, and seeing that you have two little black girls in the area. You're in a residential area, and you shoot indiscriminately when you did not have to. Right? This is where I kind of get a little upset about it. Is that if they would have called it away, you could have went to a less than lethal response. Probably could have even hit the person with the car. There's a lot of other options that were available other than shots on target from a moving vehicle as he's driving. Because you don't see either of the two officers that are there chasing him actually put rounds on target, and both of them now know that he does not have a weapon. And the theatrics begin the moment the shots ring out. That now they're pretending that the single suspect that did not have a weapon now has a weapon, and now they're fearful for their lives. And nobody set the record straight because they now need to do the CYA, cover their own behinds at this point. And so this is one of those issues where, for me, looking at it, it's where is the footage of the police cruiser, because they're doing an outstanding job in the transparency so far with all the other footage that they had. The footage they're missing, the police cruiser footage. So you had two police cruisers at a minimum, and then once they were rolling the suspect over, and again, I'm not going to show that because I don't want to get any kind of strikes from YouTube, and there is blood that's involved. But again, links to the video down below, along with my show notes. I'm going to include those as well. All of that's down below. You can actually take a look at it and see exactly what's going on in that situation. It's interesting from that perspective that it should be that they roll the individual over, they get this weapon, or purported weapon, which it turns out, I'm not gonna say it's funny, but the gun is identified as approximately 6-inch black metallic latch actuator, is what the CEO of Media Relations, what she put out there. So we get a picture of it. Everything is there, but it's not a weapon. He intended it to be a weapon. You play stupid games, you get stupid prizes, so to speak. But the stupid prizes, because you're in a residential area, it really should have been a less than lethal response at that point. Especially once you know that it's not a weapon, that it wasn't a gun, and the officer was able to. You have the information that you derived from the 911 call and what went out from dispatch. You're assuming that it's a weapon. So Monday morning quarterbacking it after the fact. What did they know at the time? Is the way I'm looking. Is your training at the time sufficient for the issues that you're gonna face? I don't want police officers dealing with citizens. This is not a war zone. You're not dealing with enemy combatants or insurgents. You're dealing with the citizens. And yes, you're dealing with some citizens that do things that are wrong. Don't get me. I'm not saying he didn't deserve stupid prizes, but you're in a residential area, and the stupid prizes should have been a less than lethal response, right? The moment you recognize it's no longer a lethal, that it rises, especially when you see when they're rolling him over, it's like at least 9 officers in the video frame, right? So you're looking at it. There's at least 9 officers in this video frame there should have been a less than lethal response. You have more than enough bodies on location. Not only did you have more than enough bodies on location, you had less than lethal options that were available. And if your only tool is a hammer, then all your problems look like a nail is an old adage. And this becomes, to me, a training issue where police officers, in dealing with black people in the black community, especially scary black men, and you get a call, you got a green light from a black man telling you that they have a black man who's a possible assailant in the community. He's a transient. There's all these buzzwords for him. And then later on, after they give you all the information on him, they tell you about his arrest record or the warrants that were out on him, even though that wasn't what he was arrested for. That's not what he's booked on, and that's not what he's being charged with. But they put that in there to help drive the narrative that they have right now on this individual. And he deserved to be apprehended. He deserved to be taken off the street. All of those things could be true. At the same time, he did not deserve a police officer firing recklessly from a moving vehicle, and the other two police officers, once as they recognized it wasn't a gun, the next step should have been the same sense of urgency to call it away. You call it away, the other officers now know it's a less than lethal response, and there are no shots fired within a residential area where you have young black kids out there playing.